the process forward. As I said, this lecture is actually a composite lecture of two pioneers who tried to show us the way. We've heard one half, and now we turn to the other half from Dr. Rahul Khullar.
All ladies and gentlemen, friends. It's always very difficult coming to speak at any forum because you don't know what your clients are like. And you have to know what your clients are like because that's where you got to pitch whatever pitch you have to make. And judged from that standard, this is a particularly difficult audience because you have academics, you have diplomats, you have trade specialists, you have practitioners, and then to top it all, you have the cherry on the cake, which is the media. So it is truly very, very difficult, going to be very difficult talking to you. I therefore took the easy way out, not knowing who was going to be here. I was going to tell Isha that, look, you know, if you really wanted a lecture, it didn't matter whether you asked Zafar to do it or me to do it. We'll tell you the same story. And this is something we've consistently maintained. It doesn't matter who speaks, he's going to tell the same thing. So I have nothing to say or add in terms of substance to what he has already told you. What I am going to try and do to you today quickly is to give you some logical structure and coherence to what we were doing. Because I think somewhere in the process of doing whatever we do, it is important to keep that logical structure and coherence in place. Now, I have requested some tables to be handed out, and if they have been given to you, then I'll begin there. I think the starting point is how trade has evolved, and Zafar gave you a very good idea of what happened since 47. But when you see tables 1 and 2, which I have circulated, you will see that how dramatically things changed in the country and our trade in a matter of years. In 48-49, as he was pointing out, India's share in Pakistan's imports was 50%. That is, if Pakistan imported $100 worth of goods, 50 of them came from India. By 1975, that was down to 0.06%. That tells you your story, okay? And when you look at that table, table 1, that tracks it from 48, 49, 75, 76, and then adds on 2 more years. But essentially, there was a huge amount of trade which suddenly vanished into thin air. Point number 1. Point number 2, again, which Zafar made, I'm only repeating it. By 1996, India moved to MFN. It's fine. We will deal with Pakistan on an MFN basis, none of this positive list, negative list business. And that was done unilaterally. Second, thereafter, essentially what happened is that trade expanded because of the previous, Mr. Vajpayee's visit, and following Mr. Vajpayee's visit, the steady expansion in the positive list on the Pakistan side. That's what triggered the trade expansion. So much so that by 2005-06, you are back to about 3% of total imports. And by 2009-10, which is well before either Mr. Zafar Mahmood or Rahul Khullar showed up on the scene, you are already happy at 6%. So I think it's important to keep those numbers in that picture in view. Now that is where, in a sense, the slate was drawn, and that's where we both started up from. Now, the detailed numbers of trade between the two countries are in table 2, which has also been circulated. And table 3 gives you what has happened over the last 5 to 6 years, most recently. Again, bottom line, you're looking at total volume of trade of about 2.6 billion, 2.1 our side, 0.5 their side. It's a trade surplus of the order of about $1.5 billion. Now, just like Zafar began with a story about meeting at Serena Hotel and said, "Ki bhai karna ki hai?" Let me tell you that I think one of the main things that guided us was, how do we solve a problem? How do we not look back? And I will give you 2 examples just to illustrate it. While the meeting was in progress in Islamabad, Zafar had this fancy, glitzy presentation made about what happened in the first round, what happened in the second round, what happened in the third round. By the time he reached the second round, I said, "Yaar, band kar aisa. Jo ho gaya se ho gaya, aage badho. Why are you wasting my time talking about what happened in the past? We have to talk about what's going to happen in the future." The meeting came to a grinding halt. All the slides were put aside. And everybody started talking in Punjabi, because they were all Punjabis around the table. Second thing which I will say, and that's the only other anecdote I will tell you. A much wiser man than me told me that, "Rahul, when I want to win a friend, I don't mind losing an argument." And I think that is the touchstone by which both of us measured what we gained or what we lost in terms of collectively moving the agenda forward. And I say that to you with the greatest of humility and in all honesty. To go back to what I promised to do was to give you a structure. Essentially, it's a 7-legged monster, of which one critical component was, how are you going to liberalize trade and expand trade? And this was not a nuts and bolts issue, this was a policy issue. And I separate this from the rest. It had 2 subcomponents. One was, first, how are you going to normalize trade? And the second is, how are you going to expand trade through the preferential trading arrangements? These are 2 completely separate tracks. Now, those of you who are trade experts will instantly understand I'm talking about MFN on one hand and a PTA on the other. But that was the policy framework, and that is essentially what we need to get sorted out. The supporting measures which needed to be taken up, and you will find them liberally littered everywhere, were 6 others. One, you are not going to get the trade expansion or liberalization if you don't do something about trade infrastructure. So trade infrastructure was critical. You're going to have to do something about trade facilitation, because otherwise without that, it's not going to happen. You are going to have to address issues of NTBs, perceived or otherwise. You have to tackle the non-tariff barriers. You have to start a business-to-business engagement, which means your business, your private sector has to talk to their private sector. The chambers of commerce have got to start talking with each other. If this doesn't happen, nothing is going to happen. Then you have to take up investment and banking, which are supporting services for any trade. So those are 5 legs, and the 6th leg was essentially, can we have any new trade initiatives? And these derive from proximity. One is, think of something like power, which is normally a non-tradable. Suddenly, you could think of power being traded across borders as a tradable. So why not that? And the second was petroleum products. So here are 2 new trade initiatives which was put in there, and then, but essentially, if you look at it, the logical structure was, here is a policy framework of trade expansion and liberalization with these supporting legs, And you have to act simultaneously on all these fronts. Okay? And I make this point only to help those of you who wade through the bureaucracies that is liberally put up on all our websites, so that you can make sense of the gobbledygook that we write there, and actually come to us, distill it into just these 5 or 6 categories. Now, once you've got that picture right, then now I invite you, ladies and gentlemen, to turn to the last slide, or the last, which gives you a chronology of events from April 2011 to September 2012.
Slides are not available with everyone.
I'm sorry, sir, I printed 30 copies. They're bringing it around. Please share a copy if you have one. I can't share this one, but short of that, what this will tell you, I was almost going to call them landmarks, and then I said I'm being too vain. So I just said chronology and left it at that. But believe you me, each of those events is an event, major turning point in itself. And I've explained everything. Zafar has already told you the sequence of events leading to each such event. I'm not going to repeat it. The point you need to ask yourself is this. This was done from April 2011 to April 2012 in the space of 1 year. That is how far we moved in just 1 year. Add 6 months more, 17 months, look at what we could have got done. Now, I think that at the end of the day, a lot of the things that we had envisaged in the first meeting which we had just outside Murray, all of it has fallen into place. And if you go back and read the minutes of the April 2011 meeting, and you take a tick mark and count with respect to this chronology, you'll see virtually most of it all complete. And I am not going to spend any further time on that. I've given you the structure, I've told you what's going on. I think one of the things which may seem evident to everybody, or may not be evident to everybody, and something which civil servants very rarely talk about, but it is important for civil servants to talk about that, and for society in general to talk about it, to remind yourself, why the hell are we doing this? What for? What is the purpose behind this? Now, one sense or one way of looking at it, and I appreciate the diplomat's perspective. I am not looking at it from the diplomat's perspective. But I understand, Mr. Bashir or Sharad telling me that, look, this is part of this gigantic big puzzle and it all has to move forward. I've heard that, thank you very much. But I'm not looking at it from that lens. I'm looking at it from the trade lens. And from the trade lens, we need to constantly ask ourselves, why are we doing this? And I think the reminder there is many things which occurred to me. And I can tell you why. Because this question was not put to me by anybody in the Indian media. But this was put to me as a question by the Pakistan media when I was crossing over, when I was coming back in April 2011. That साहब आप आके तो चले गए, मीटिंग कर ली, ये सब हो गया, निकलेगा क्या ऐसे? होगा क्या? हमारा क्या फायदा होगा? And it is those questions which we need to address. Because if we, whether it's the media, whether it's civil society, call it whatever you want, if you are going to remind your politicians of why they need to get their act together, then you have to answer these sorts of questions, not nebulous questions about peace, prosperity, and apple pie. you have to answer these questions. Now, I will just give you what I quickly drew up as a laundry list at that point of time. And the reason I remember it is because some of you had to suffer this sort of a lecture before when I was Commerce Secretary, so tough luck you are hearing the same things. One is it will permit integration across industries. If you open trade on the land route and in other normalized trade, you will immediately have industrial integration. Quite simply because imagine there is no border across the Punjab. Imagine that tariffs have been virtually reduced. The nature of industrial structure on both sides will change, will completely change. Because any of you who've done any elementary transport cost economics will realize how suddenly an industry which is dead as a dodo becomes completely viable because of trade. Second, new nascent sectors whose competitiveness was neither anticipated or ever expected will suddenly bloom. You don't know what those are. It's blind territory. Now, I'll give you another example that when the Atari Wagah post was being inaugurated, Zafar and I were driving, zipping past from Amritsar from the airport to Atari in the same car. And we were talking about him having to take back oodles of mithai. कि हल्दीराम या कहीं बीकानेर वाला से मेरे को मिठाई लेके जानी पड़ेगी, 8-10 किलो उठा के लेके जाऊँगा. So he said, यार अच्छा होगा वहीं बीकानेर वाला को बैठा दो. लाहौर से मतलब दिल्ली थोड़ी आना पड़ेगा, वहीं खरीद लेना. Third, trade across the two Punjabs. You cannot imagine the enormous potential for trade. And if those of you, and most of you were not there, but on that most auspicious day when the Atari Wagah checkpost, the integrated checkpost was inaugurated, on the same podium you had the Indian Finance Minister, the Indian Commerce Minister and the Pakistani Commerce Minister, the Chief Minister of Punjab, who does not belong to the ruling party, and the Chief Minister of their Punjab, who also did not at that time belong to the ruling party. All on one podium, everybody cheering wildly, saying, thank you very much, please, this is our ultimate dream. 4, you're going to get expansion, and this is all premised on many of the things which I've written up, and I'm not going to, marine trade, which will go through Mundra, Kandla and Mumbai. Huge amounts of marine trade which can happen. 2 other things. One is lowering the cost of tradables. Now, and I'm not talking about non-tradables, which means, for instance, at the spot market on electricity, given the problem in Pakistan, the spot price there is going to be higher than the spot price in Amritsar. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, does it make sense, as Bhanu Pratap Mehta said in an article 2-3 days ago, does it make sense to enrich Dubai when we could be enriching ourselves? That is, it's daft, and I've told Zafar this in so many words, it's daft importing petroleum products from halfway around the world into Pakistan, or even getting them from Dubai, because Dubai does not do it for gratis. When you can pick it up from a refinery sitting in Gujarat, it just doesn't make sense. And the cost of tradables, the difference I think worked out, roughly speaking, when we last measured the numbers, almost to equivalent of $12 to $14 a barrel, the equivalent price difference. Last is what in diplomatic dialogue, I think Shyam Saran coined the phrase in a speech called the challenge of proximity. but I'm not going down that diplomatic road. I'm going down the pure economics of proximity, the pure advantages of proximity. Why are we not harnessing those advantages of proximity? That is the killer case for us. It is not linked to anything in this isolation, but the sheer fact that you can trade and gain in terms of margins, and that advantage arises purely because of geographic proximity. We would be foolish to lose that advantage. And if we are sacrificing it at some altar of history, then woe betide us. I have only two other remarks to make, ladies and gentlemen, which in a way go to the core of why we are here. And let me begin by first telling you all that we should congratulate Zafar. He's been made chairman of the Punjab Public Service Commission. So, but I say that for a reason. He is chairman of the Punjab Public Service Commission, and I'm chairman of a terrible place. The point is, we are not principal actors anymore. That's the point. Okay? It's very easy for both of us, in one sense, to come here and tell you all, hey, you know, we're such great guys, we did this, we did that. But I think at the end of it, neither Zafar nor I would have come to say that. We've had 40 years of civil service experience. I think we've grown beyond that stage. I think what we have come here to say is, even though we are not principal actors, it is important for those of you in the audience who can influence these principal actors, wherever they are. My colleagues in the commissary are liberally littered across the audience. They are principal actors. Okay? Along with them are diplomats, academia, and it doesn't matter whether it's on this side of the border or on that side of the border. You are the guys who have to, in a sense, as the Americans would say, take the ball and run with it now. As non-principal actors, all we can tell you is, look, this was what was done, this was what the motivation was, this is the logical structure that was put in place. And believe you me, that logical structure will survive time. It's not that it was thought through in like that. It took a lot of hard work working that structure out. But at the end of the day, it will survive the test of time. What will not survive the test of time is ups and downs in politics and shifts in moods. And I think for that reason and that reason alone, it is indeed really timely that ICRIER has sort of put such a sort of conversation together, a dialogue together. Not to revive interest in either Zafar or me, we're old fogies, but to revive interest in what is of substantial importance to both countries. And I think it's on that note that I would like to end. Thank you very much for your patience, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Rahul, for a very stimulating presentation. Now, we have 20 minutes, and we would like to use that to give you an opportunity to put your questions to our two speakers. What better way to get them to really unfold their thoughts? So may I just open the discussion to the floor? Ashok? Gulati, Dr. Ashok Gulati.
Thank you very much to all the speakers here, Ambassador, for reminding us the historical past when we were much more liberal on trade than perhaps we are today. One thing that faces both the countries, and that's where I come from. By the way, I have some nostalgic memories. I visited my house there after 58 years. And I've been in touch with Mr. Sartaj Aziz on a number of issues. But one question that we had been struggling is the issue of food security in both the nations that is haunting us. And the trade liberalization I was working on, even a crop like rice or a crop like cotton, where there is a possibility of trade. India, being the biggest exporter of rice in the world today, still has an import duty on rice of 70 to 80%. Now, Pakistanis, my friends on the other side of the border, say, you are subsidizing power, you are subsidizing water, you are subsidizing fertilizer, and you are killing our markets. Now, can we harmonize some of these things and create a joint, because Basmati particularly is a monopoly of this entire region of Punjab. And today, we are competing bitterly on that and bringing the prices down in the world market. I'm just talking of the regional interest. With cooperation and some harmonization of policies, we can perhaps do it better. Same thing in cotton. There are possibilities if we liberalize that. Today we are falling short of short staple cotton, medium staple cotton. That can come in, bring more manufacturing. It's going all the way now to Bangladesh and China, but it can also. But on a bigger issue of what I faced when I was visiting Pakistan, number of times I did that the scientists, agriculture, find it so difficult to come and go around and see what is happening on this side of the border versus that side of the border because of visa issues and everything. So any liberalization on that front for the scientists, like the businessmen, a free visa for, sort of more liberal to go may help. Any thoughts on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok. I think I'm going to encourage people to first ask or comment. When I collect about 5 or 6, I'll turn to our speakers. Yes, please. I request everyone to give their name before they speak. Yeah.
My name is S.P. Sharma. My question is to Mr. Zafar Mahmood. The whole concept of trade is facilitated by the perception of trade community of peaceful atmosphere in the country they want to trade with. But the Taliban effect there is such that I as a tradesman am convinced that if I tie up with someone in Pakistan, Taliban are in a position and capable of disrupting it. Now, my question is, recent death of Mr. Masood. In your opinion, do you think that he having gone now, who has really created havoc